Hi, glad you could drop by today for Neighborhood Photographer on Visual Art Photography Tutorials. Now, today's subject, macro flowers. Now, not just any old pictures of flowers, but very special close-up pictures of the anatomy of flowers. I don't know about you, but usually when I take pictures of flowers, I try to interpret it in such a way that the flowers look almost ethereal and very romantic, if you will. Sometimes I use soft focus, shallow depth of field, that sort of thing. Today, it's completely different. We're going to be getting up so close to these flowers that you haven't seen them this way with the naked eye, that's for sure. It's something very, very special. Now, is it beautiful? In the eye of the beholder, I think. I think it's fantastic to see a flower the way we're going to show it today. Now, what you're going to need, of course, is a macro lens for this. Usually they run in the range of about 100 millimeters, something like that. What I have here is actually a 50 millimeter macro, which is half life size, and then there's this converter that goes with it. This is a very old lens, by the way, and it gives me my life size, 1 times my life size image. Now, today we're going to be doing that, going life size, but we're also going to be getting even closer than life size, 2 times and sometimes even 3 times life size. Now, to do that, what you need to do, if you don't already have it, is get a set of extension tubes. I got these Kenko extension tubes. I got them secondhand, and they really weren't very expensive. So you might want to go that way. Now, what these things are, there's no glass in this at all. You know, it's just straight right through. And they usually come in sets of 3, and they can be broken up like this. They can be taken apart various ways. There's a very, very narrow one. There's one in the middle that's a little bit thicker, and then one that's very, very thick. Now, the whole point of this, if you're not aware of it, is to, when you have your macro lens, when you add an extension, the extension tubes, it puts even more distance between the glass in your lens and your camera sensor, and that's what adds the magnification. So it ends up being quite a long lens, at least it can if you want, but when you do this kind of thing, you can really, really get highly magnified images. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, if you're not too sure about macro photography, if you're kind of new to it, I have other videos on macro photography, from focusing basics to some really interesting subjects as well. And that banner should be on your screen right now. And if you want to click on that banner, it will take you to the playlist, my macro photography playlist, so that you can take a look at those if you're not too sure about macro photography. Now, let's get going on our project today. Macro flowers, the anatomy of flowers.
So this is one way that we often look at flowers. The beauty of flowers is we use a diffused effect, or perhaps part of the image is out of focus, a softness, if you will. It kind of enhances the beauty of flowers. It's a classic look to flowers. So this is these are some poppies with that kind of treatment. Here's another flower where we get a little bit of the inside of the flower with the stamens and the anthers and the pistil and things like that, but it's very, very soft, out of focus up here, shallow depth of field. I think I used an aperture of about f5.6, which with a macro lens is pretty shallow. Over here, same thing, a softness. Only the rim here at the top, only these petals here are actually in focus. Everything else is out of focus. That's done on purpose. It was a very shallow depth of field. I think it was about f4, again, with a close-up lens and a macro lens, and you have mostly everything out of focus. It's a softness. It's a classic way of looking at flowers. But in this tutorial, what I want to show you is a completely different way of seeing flowers. We start with this one. All right. Now, if you look at a lily like this with the naked eye, you can see this, but really not as clearly. You can't see the pollen as well and everything in this with this type of detail. And that's what macro photography is all about, showing you something that either you can't really see too clearly with the naked eye, or maybe showing you something that you can't see at all with the naked eye. All right. Now, Orchids. Typical orchids, just a bunch of them. Very, very nice. But again, orchids, nothing really special about the composition. I just wanted to show you that these are standard orchids. But what can you do with them? Well, you can go up a little bit closer and do something like this. But what if you get in really, really close, and take something that's like this. This is the side. It's kind of artistic. At least I was trying for that with a lot of, soft focus stuff going on and shooting the side of the orchid, a little bit of a different look. But what if you turn that around and move in really close? What do you come up with? Something that you really don't see with the naked eye. I call this bird of prey because I see something completely different than a flower here. I see a head here with an eye here and an eye here and then a nose. And then I see these wings coming out. And it looks like some kind of a creature flying in. That's the way I see it. You may see something completely different. Now, I also think this is very beautiful, but it is a completely different beauty than that classic beauty that I was talking about before. This is a completely different way of looking at a flower. Now, if you look at an orchid, this kind of orchid, with the naked eye, you can see this. You can actually see this up here and all of this, but you don't get this right in your face look, so you don't think about it as being something other than a flower. But I really see this as being some kind of a creature. How about this? Christmas cactus. Now this, a little bit after the shoot, about a week or two after, all of these things, a lot of other flowers had come out that was full of flowers, but at this particular time, there was just this one flower. And I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, well, I'm showing you this shot just to show you what the whole thing looks like. But it didn't do anything for me, obviously. I wanted to get in closer and get into this flower and see what was going on in it. So I put the macro lens on and I got closer. And I thought, hey, this is kind of nice. This is good. But I wanted to get into the anatomy of the flower, as I did with this one over here. I mean, you really get into how this thing is built almost. You know what I mean? So I'm over here and I'm thinking, this is nice, but I want to concentrate more on what's going on over here. I want to see these stamens and I want to see the pistil and I want to get closer. So I did. And now you're getting into the anatomy of the flower. And it's also a way of looking at something completely differently. You don't see this kind of thing that often. Certainly I haven't seen it with the Christmas cactus anyway. And it just makes your photography a little bit different. And it shows you something that you really can't see this clearly with the naked eye, which is the beauty of macro photography. Taken from the top, looking down on the flower, a different angle to this, okay? But let's move closer. Looking down, I also did the diagonal thing to add a little bit more drama that way, but now you're closer. And look at these. Look at the stamens coming out, and oh my goodness, it's just a way that you don't necessarily see these things naturally. I used a black background too, to hide, or rather to highlight what was going on. A different way of looking at flowers in your macro photography. Now, by the way, when I'm doing my macro photography, because I am up so close, and there is such a shallow depth of field, if you really want to show something and get some clarity on it, you really need to use an f-stop, at least f11, but usually f16, maybe even f22. You really have to stop your lens down. And even then, you sometimes have problems with focus. I wasn't worried about this being out of focus. In fact, I wanted it to be out of focus. I wanted these to be as clear as possible, and I wanted this to be as clear as possible. But even with the f-stop that I was using, which was f16, it was still a little bit soft over here. So be aware of your aperture. Even closer. Look at that. Now I was using f22 or f16, but there was still some clarity problems here. This is a little bit soft here, and not all of these. The ones on the bottom are a little bit soft, but you get the idea. nice and clear here, and nice and clear through here. Now that's the anatomy of a flower. There is no way the naked eye can see it like this. You can see it, but not like this. This is really bringing you into a different world of flowers. Now, if you wanted to take a look, forget the stamens and the pistil and just look at another part of the flower, you can go in here and move around in there a little bit and get something a little bit more abstract, perhaps. Or take a shot right from the front, and now it's pushing out at you. But certainly a different way to look at flowers.
Without a doubt, a different way to look at flowers and taking pictures of flowers. I hope that got your creative macro juices flowing just a little bit today. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.